there's so many ways I could go at this, but I just want to go to one place right away that, you know, I've had the kind of torture and great pleasure of having to write a lot recently about dance. And one of the things I've been looking at is this idea that, you know, it exists on a spectrum from something from entertainment to philosophy. And I just thank you for going towards philosophy. And that was so fascinating. It's like a choreographic impulse that's coming somewhere that's so anti-explanatory. And that's such a rarity nowadays. Everything is so couched somehow in a kind of area of understanding. I think even artists who are ostensibly avant-garde, conceptualism even is a kind of poverty-stricken form of representation to some degree. And I think this goes very far into kind of putting forth, positing choreography as another kind of set of questions that are posed to the world. And I have a lot of respect for that. So thank you so much. I'd like to see if we can kind of look at some of the generative material or sources that are available to you. And one of them that I had asked you about before is body-mind centering, and how that might find its way into this, if it does. I don't think it's kind of in any clearly applied way, but I do think that it's burning through there somehow. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, maybe explain what that is to people.
Okay. Well, that work is a very large system of exploring aspects of body and mind. And I guess I studied for about 15 years pretty diligently. It's not really about anatomy, it's not really about figuring out how to use yourself better, like that sort of thing. It really is about embodiment and resonance, I think. And for the performer, I think it becomes about presence. Like, how can you be present in all of your aspects? I mean, so I'll try to get a little more concrete about it. Like, I do often work with the dancers just on this idea of cellular resonance. It sounds like it wouldn't be possible, but it actually is possible to feel yourself on that cellular level. And it works best if somebody shows it to you first, you know, like somebody who can resonate at that level, shows your body how to do it. So that's kind of how you learn how to do it. You have to practice it. I mean, it's like any other kind of practice, like yoga or lots of other practices. The more you practice it, the more you become it, sort of. So anyway.
One of the things that you've taught me before when you've seen my work or something, you go to the organs and you talk about it from that way, and it seems to be one iteration of looking at subterranean forces that manifest on the surface imagery of the body. And in this instance, it's really, for me, you know, I hate when people talk about my work like this, but I do think it's pertinent here, the kind of presence of ballet in the work, and kind of, of ballet language in the work, and how at odds, kind of the persona of the amazing performers. The performers are amazing. And how at odds their persona and the kind of delivery system for the ballet and the kind of internalization is with the external structures of steps from ballet. So that's really an interesting kind of surface versus subterranean motors that I think could be interesting to hear about, or what do you think about that?
Can you ask me a question again?
Yeah, how does, I mean, is the kind of internal organ system or cellular system or blood system at work somehow when you're handing out these almost generic steps from ballet at some point?
Well, I mean, yes, in that if it doesn't look interesting, then I don't use it. So, like, I have to figure out a way, either it comes out of the dancer looking interesting, or we have to find a way into it to be able to bring forth that thing that makes it really interesting. So I don't really ever too much start with steps or even movement ideas. I don't know, I start with situations more, and then watch what comes out of it, and then I do give them a lot of coaching, usually, to how to like make it more this, make it more this, make it more this, or, you know, that sort of thing.
And is that how you maybe get to this sense of reduction that you spoke about in the article with Siobhan, reduction as opposed to minimalism?
Yeah, I mean, I just was also trying to write something about my work fairly recently, and I was looking at that word or that concept, minimalism, and I was thinking about the things that I relate to when I hear minimalism, like in visual art, like series of things, or in music, series of patterns. And my first hit on it was I just had a very spatial feeling about a lot of minimalism, that it extends somehow laterally and takes up a lot of space. And then I was thinking, my work sometimes does that, but I feel like also my work goes this way. So it goes up and down more than it goes laterally. And so I was searching for, like, what is that up and down thing? And I started looking at philosophical ideas, and one of them was the idea of reductionism as polarities, and it seemed like when you reduce something, you make it more compact in a way, rather than stretching it out. You make it more compact, but it retains the essence somehow. So I just think about the things that I know, like, say, perfume essences or something. Like, you take a whole plant and then you reduce it down to like one little drop of oil or something. So
it seems also like there's something going on at the intuitive level about editing the work, that there's something in your kind of, in your mind and in your embodiment that can find these things, because what was happening for the zigzagging section, where they fill out all the space and zigzag across it in the first or second section, I forget where it is, and then the Batman section. Both of these, I begin by kind of confronting them, like, you know, somewhere a voice in me is saying, what are they doing? And then slowly that just goes away, because there's something ineluctable about what's happening there. It seems to be like it's going to be filled out for a certain period of time. It kind of represents human labor, and there's something about the fact that we put ourselves through these things in life that can make you stop asking a question and just fall into the experience of it. And that's something that I think is really, you know, there's a lot of repetition in work going on these days, and very different kind of usages of it. And this one, I felt, did something to kind of bring me from a linguistic analysis into a kind of embodied presence while I was watching it. And I think it was done skillfully and intuitively at the same time. Do you respond to that at all? Or?
Well, I mean, I definitely think that I work intuitively, mainly. I sometimes have to try to explain it conceptually, but I don't start from that. So, but say that second section, the one that was this way and that way, we started with a very simple idea, which is they're looking one way and they're moving away from what they're looking at. So, I mean, you know, in one way, that's pretty heavy. Like, you're attracted to something, but you actually move away from it rather than going toward it. So, or you move away from it in order to actually know it better. So that's another idea too. So they're just working with that really simple thing of like attraction of the eyes that way, but moving the body away from it constantly. And
I also thought that the collaboration with Glenn, where did Glenn go? Is he there? Oh, you're up there now. You moved. That's amazing. It was all really incredible.
yeah.
And the costumes and the music, I really felt, yeah, the music was really wonderful. Nice job. And the whole thing, I mean, it was really interesting, because one of the things that's present here that, again, is a bit of an anomaly presently, is a sense of design, but at the same time, it's really felt design. There's something about it that is both kind of calculated and constructed, and at the same time, deeply felt. And there's something like neo-abstract about that I think is really interesting, and again, compelling to sit in front of. It really pulls you into it somehow. The mind, searching for the mind behind this thing is really interesting. Do you want to talk about any of the collaboration there, or how that worked?
Well, I've worked with Glenn before, and it's just really fun to work with Glenn. Because he's so committed somehow. And Jeffrey, I mean, this is the first time we've worked together, but
Good job. That's great.
yeah, I thought it was an amazing job. Playing live for that film. I thought it really worked tonight. Yay! Yeah. Yeah. So, what was the question?
Well, how did you work together? Anything you want to say about the collaborative process? Or with the dancers as well?
Well, Jeffrey came to a lot of rehearsals, a lot of rehearsals just by himself, and worked with us just singly like that for a long time, like developing things in the middle of rehearsals, and then later started putting longer pieces together.
Was there any kind of like, I know there's this thing about the hexagons that you spoke about. Hexagrams, I mean, yeah. Do you want to speak about that? Is that part of the structure that's still there, or is that not there anymore?
Well, the hexagram idea I used at a certain time in order to give myself a structure, because I had all these ideas that I was kind of playing around with, like the kicking and the kicking pattern and the way that it kept doing this through space, and then the other patterns. But I didn't have a really good way to organize it in the beginning. So I just don't remember exactly how I decided to do this, but I decided I would make it into 8 sections of 9 minutes each. And that was just kind of based on this numerology thing, which actually one of the very, very, very first sources was looking at Serenade, Balanchine's Serenade. And I was so struck when I looked at the beginning of that ballet, very famous ballet, that it starts with 2 groups of 8 dancers, and then there's like a 9th person in the middle of between the 2 8s, making 17 dancers. So it's just interesting because in the Chinese numerology, they use 8 and 9 a lot, and 8 is considered a yin number or a female number, and 9 is a yang number, male. So I love the idea that Balanchine put like that one person in the middle who could be in either group. It could be a group of 8 or a group of 9. And so I just decided I'd have 8 sections of 9 minutes each. And then like the kick section became a double section, so that's 18 minutes. And a couple of the sections fell away along the way. One of them just fell away today. Like, we cut one section out, which you didn't get to see, but we might tag it on to the like an after show, like
After the talk.
tomorrow or something. After this talk, we'll be doing that section.
I think that's interesting because the sections are so kind of clean, and one of the things that this kind of brings into evidence for me is an idea that's just all over dance is, are these things separate things in a row, or is there some concatenation that suggests accumulation? So from section to section, one is brought into this kind of problematic of, what am I reading? Am I reading these as something that accrues, or as singular things that react to each other? And I mean, I think that's really central to the construction of all dance, but here it's just really brought forth.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever made a dance like this before, where I had really sharply delineated sections. Yeah, so first time I've done that.
And the other thing I wanted to ask, and we'll ask questions, is about the kind of the affect of the dancers, and they're kind of, this is the first dance in a long time where they weren't very crazed. And I mean, I love that in the other works, but I was thinking, like, where did that go? I mean, if it goes somewhere, does it get subsumed into kind of the aggression of the repetition, or do you feel that there's some kind of willful decision to get rid of that, or how do you feel about that one kind of characteristic element of your work?
I don't know how to answer that exactly, except for that this is the first dance that I made when I didn't have a studio of my own to work in.
Yeah.
And I mean, please don't think I have studios and stuff, but I did have this little, very rundown, terribly ancient studio that I had access to for many years. And when you have a place like that, you can do things like shout and scream and do crazy things. It's harder to do that, and if you go in to rent 4 hours
in a white space with mirrors.
In a white space with mirrors and people looking in the door and stuff like that. So I think that was a little bit of an influence in just working slightly differently. But I still think that they're a little bit crazed.
Yeah, no, definitely. But I mean, what I really think is amazing.
It's more suppressed or something.
What I really love, and I respect in a lot of artists, and as an older artist, there's not that many artists older than me that are, you know, role models of people who just kind of discard their signature all the time, which is something I look to do. And I think it's really interesting to not kind of reuse kind of moments that have been congratulated in your work before somehow. And go to a new place, it's just really, I hate the word refreshing, but something like that. I mean, psychically, to watch it, you'd be like, some new step is being taken, some new kind of place in the mind is being traveled to. So maybe we could ask some questions in the audience. Is that Glenn? Yeah. Backlit Glenn?
Oh, you can hear me? Oh. The section that was removed, I feel like, had a lot of RoseAnne's signature style in it, and that craze. And it was, RoseAnne really felt the need to depart from that. Like, it felt like everything else was in a different place than that.
Yeah, that's true.
That's interesting, but I mean, you did it. It's pretty amazing that you did it the night of the show.
I
As
know.
a choreographer, I feel that's why
Yeah.
dancers are. But I wanted to say, what was the other thing I was thinking? Oh, the end. The end is profoundly uneventful. And I'm wondering if that is just a suggestion of just continuance, or, I mean, how do you feel about that? The ending. The ending is not in Ta-Da Land in any way.
Not in Ta-Da.
Ta-Da Land, yeah.
Well, I don't know. It's still finding itself a little bit, I think. Yeah.
It's interesting. I mean, I remember seeing the events, Cunningham's events, where they'd just be dancing and then the curtain just comes down. And I love the suggestions like, take this in your head and take it home.
Yeah.
Work
Yeah.
with it, you know.
Yeah, take it home.
I'm not going to do like a clipping a moment.
Yeah.
It's still going on, you know, so there's something like
Yeah.
that. Okay, are there any questions? Everyone has to ask one question, so we're going to be here a long time.
I want to make a statement.
Statement, Kyle
I
DeCambia.
love all your different kind of weird time warp frame things going on. It was interesting, Tere pointed out that you're working in this kind of modular sections. I wondered if there's something, I don't really have a real question, but I'd like you to say some more about your concept of time.
Concept of time, you mean in terms of how long something lasts, or no?
Different senses of speed, different senses of the granular movement of time in the film, in the thing, the repetition and rhythm in the pacing. Because you've got like, and the music, you've got a whole bunch of different universes of, seems to me, of time that are happening.
Yeah, I think that came into the work kind of unconsciously, I have to say. I mean, the film, in a certain way, it was just a practical thing. It was a 90-minute film, and I personally edited it down to 9 minutes. So, it's compression. Yeah. So, I did take some of it out so that it could barely be watchable, but to speed it up. And then I just, personally, I know for some people it's really hard to watch, but I personally enjoy the, you know, like the emotional quality of all that kind of like vibrating and shaking and, yeah.
Well, I think one of the things I'm writing about, I'm trying to write this long essay called The Politics of Rhythm, and there's something in your use of contrapuntal ideas in the Batman thing in particular that is kind of just on this edge of kind of coalescing and falling apart all the time. And that's a really interesting use of time as a kind of a statement, not just a musical reference, but there's a kind of statement being made. There's a drama being created just because of the contrapuntal decisions that you make there. I think it's really very forceful part about that. It makes the watching of it in a long-term watching of it completely fascinating because it keeps going through these different modulations.
Yeah, I mean, I know it's simple, it doesn't do a lot in that, but I really was trying to keep it moving, even when it's not doing a lot. And that's one of my complaints about a lot of dance, even dance that sometimes is leaping all over the stage. I sometimes have a sense that it's not really moving, you know, I don't know, like that's, I think, an embodiment thing, you know, like, so I really tried to keep the movement simple so that we could work on how to move it actually from the inside and kind of take the audience on that ride. I mean, in the audience, did you feel like you were doing those, we call them the scallops, like when they go through, I don't know, I did when I watch it, I'm like, hey.
Up here?
Maybe one more question, comment?
Found it really interesting and clear, the sections, and intriguing, and also fascinating. I was wondering if you can talk a bit about the contextual stuff that you put in the visuals. Like the film is a very melodramatic Chinese ancient film, and it has a lot of emotional content to it, and then you kind of broke it from the natural rhythm and whatnot. And then later, the visual of the ring and the jewelry and while they're naked. It's just so fascinating and intriguing. I wonder if, I'd love to sort of like just hear how you process that.
Well, one of the themes that I gave myself, like on paper, to work with was messages that are given to women, basically, females, whatever, about life. So there's the wedding rings in the last section. The Serenade Ballet, I mean, that's often talked about in terms of that there's this odd thing that happens in the ballet that it seems like a dancer expires on stage. And I just thought it was really interesting that that's the first ballet that Balanchine made in America, you know, and like, that's funny. The ballerina dies on stage. What does that mean? The Chinese film, I just was so fascinated by it. I mean, you get the emotion of it, and the story is more specific, like it's a story of obviously love, but also betrayal. So I just was kind of picking out these little things that happen along the way in life, like, yeah, you're probably going to be betrayed. You might get married, but you might not, or you might get married and you got divorced. I mean, that's me. And I don't know, I just wanted to see if I could put those into a dance somehow. And I think that they aren't just for women. And one thing I like about this cast, I really do like this cast very, very much, is that there is a range of people. different people. Really great.
Ted, one other thing, did you have something to say?
As
Oh.
far as the Atma section goes, I thought they were all put down together and then it would go back to the different rhythms. So even though it was seemingly simple in what they were doing, technically, what was happening rhythmically was just astounding. And I think you're mathematical genius. Way beyond philosophy, but that's, and then the scalloping, that was great.
Thank
Love
you.
to see that craft.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
I think we're done. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for that.